San Juan archipelago is stunning on a clear day. Such peaceful scenery makes it hard to believe that this waterscape was once filled with fish pirates, salmon smugglers, and other border bandits vying for Pacific salmon in the waters between British Columbia and Washington state. My book, The Nature of Borders, Salmon, Boundaries, and Bandits in the Salish Sea, reveals that people have imposed different types of borders on the Salish Sea salmon fishery over time, but with very different consequences for its health and future viability. Native Americans, white canners, fish pirates, and workers of all ethnicities have struggled over how to delineate space in this fluid borderland. The salmon runs of the Fraser River and Puget Sound migrate up the Strait of Juan to Fuca and through the boundary waters that separate the United States and Canada on their way to spawn. Northwest Native peoples came to depend on these salmon runs over thousands of years. They developed very sophisticated ways of catching these fish, but available evidence suggests that they did not do their salmon fishery lasting harm. While they no doubt experienced missteps along the way, Native peoples learned how to restrict access to their best fishing locations at certain times of the year. They also developed important customs and rituals surrounding the act of salmon fishing. The result was a remarkably sustainable fishery in the pre- and early contact periods. Native borders and related fishing customs remained in place when white fur traders descended upon the region in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Northwest Indians sold thousands of salmon to white visitors on their own terms. They forced whites to eat salmon in the proper ways and largely remained in control of their fishery, even as their communities suffered severe losses due to the onset of exotic diseases. Over time, however, newcomer ideas about borders and bounded space eclipsed those of Native peoples. When the canned salmon industry boomed in the 1890s and early 1900s, white fishermen and fish trap owners commandeered Northwest Native fishing locations for their own purposes, and few Indians continued to fish as they had before. Even as whites in both BC and Washington state usurped Indian fishing locations, they found themselves competing for the same runs of salmon across the border the United States and Great Britain had drawn in 1846. Americans could not fish north of the international border, and Canadians could not fish south of it. Crossing the 49th parallel for salmon could result in arrest, a fine, or potentially an international diplomatic incident. Some fishermen fished illegally or broke their cannery contracts, while others called themselves fish pirates and stole salmon from the large, well-capitalized canners and fish trap owners. They then often quietly crossed the border to elude patrols and sell their scaled booty to competing canners on the other side of the international line. Fishermen and other fish workers of all ethnicities manipulated their proximity to the international border and their knowledge of the marine environment to garner higher prices for their fish, better wages, and better jobs. Worker mobility, interethnic tensions between fishermen and fishery workers, and class tensions between workers and their bosses all made this a chaotic, violent, and contested fishery that defied easy regulation or policing. While native borders and related customs once sustained regional salmon runs, the Anglo-American border had the opposite effect. A transnational view of this fishery is thus crucial for understanding the historical events behind the contemporary Pacific salmon crisis.